All right, so really happy to be here. Split is one of my absolute favorite cities. So when Tony reached out to me a few weeks back, he said it was a tech event in Split. Like there was no discussion, but I just hope the next time you invite me, I want to be a part of the catamaran event. That's what I want to be. Some drinks and the sunset. Yeah, one of these days. So the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is how we built a 100-person agency with social selling being our primary channel of customer acquisition, basically. But before I get into the details of this, I want to tell you a little bit about my personal story so you know where I'm coming from. So I was born in Mostar in '88, but when I was 5 years old, my family moved to Sweden in 1993, and I grew up almost my entire life in Sweden. I studied over there. I got a bachelor's degree in software engineering. But to tell you the truth, I was a really bad student, so I focused very little on studies because I started my first company as soon as I got into college. So every waking hour that I wasn't trying to get through with these exams, I would spend it into my personal websites that I was creating and stuff like that. And one of the things that I learned early on at college here was that it's not a case of build it and they will come. So we've all had great ideas of what we want to build, but if we don't have a distribution channel, it won't work. And back then, because I was a student, I couldn't pay for marketing and things like that. I had to get really good at search engine optimization. So I spent a lot of time learning search engine optimization so that I could get organic traffic to my websites. And then I built this super simple website where you could enter a word and get 100 example sentences of how you use that word in a sentence. And that website just blew up. It had over 100,000 visitors every day, over 100 million since I started the website. So I was able to make a living off of that, and I figured once I go out of college, I'm not going to go looking for a job because I'm able to make a living off of this website. But then an opportunity came around to move to San Francisco in 2010, and I was always a little bit fascinated with the US, so I figured I have to go and see what that's like. And I went there pretty oblivious. I was like 21 years old. I didn't understand what to expect of San Francisco, and I didn't even realize that it was the #1 place in the world for tech and startups and everything of that nature. But when I was there, I was very inspired by it. And I realized that I wanted to be a part of these startup communities. But I also felt when I was in circles like these where people had more experience than me in business, I couldn't really hang. I knew my tech side of things, but I wanted to get better in business. So when I came back to Sweden, I enrolled into a 2-year master's degree in entrepreneurship. So the first year of studies was theoretical studies on how to do business. And then the second year was basically an incubator where we got to start our own companies, more or less, with the help of the incubator and the college. Towards the end of that education, my professor approached me and he asked me if I wanted to start a new company with him. And he was already a very proven entrepreneur in Gothenburg already, and he had made an exit before this. So for me, this was an opportunity to learn from somebody that had already kind of done it. So I jumped on that opportunity. We built an app for schools in Sweden in the edtech space. LoopMe is an application that's still around. But for me, after 3 years in LoopMe, it got a bit monotonous as a developer, and I wanted to try something different. So in 2016, I decided that I wanted to move back to my home country in Bosnia, to Mostar, and see what life would be like there. And what I had seen in Sweden was that there was a lot of demand for software development services in this period, I would say 2014, 15, because there were so many people that were approaching me and asking me if I would, help them do some work for them. And I would always say no because I was focusing on my startup, but I figured if I just turned that coin, maybe there's an agency to be built there. But I wanted to do it specifically out of Bosnia because I felt like I wanted more or less that adventure to move back to my home country and see what that was like. Everybody was telling me like, well, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Maybe not, but I wanted to do it, right? So we grew out to about 20 people within the first 2 years, just through referrals. So friends that we knew that gave us some simple projects, and it was very simple stuff like WordPress websites, some simple applications, simple e-commerce and stuff like that. But then what happened on 2 occasions was pretty traumatic. So we grew out to 20 people, and then our biggest client, which stood for 50% of the income of the company, they got purchased by another company who had in-house development, so they didn't need our services anymore. So when that happened, they were basically told us, thank you for the time, but we don't need you anymore. And when this happens, you kind of have a panic reaction, because at that point, Nikolai and myself, we're not doing sales, we're not doing marketing, we're actually still software developers in the company, we're doing project management. So there's no pipeline of new clients coming in, there's just pure panic. And we should have learned from this the first time around, but we didn't. But the second time we did. So I told Nikolai, we cannot find ourselves in this situation again. This is tedious, it's painful, we need to be focusing on sales. I couldn't be in Gothenburg, Sweden with him, my co-founder, so I tried to do what I could do out of Mostad. So I literally went on Google and started Googling how do you do marketing and sales for an agency. And more or less, there are only 3 ways you can do this. So you can do cold outreach. So the idea is that you identify who your ideal clients would be, and you pick up the phone or you send emails, and you hope that out of 100, maybe 5 will reply, 2 end up coming to a meeting, and maybe you close 1. Warm outreach is the same thing as cold outreach, but you do it with people that you know. But you have to take a little bit of a different angle with all of this because there are personal relationships built up here, so you don't want to risk ruining a relationship because you made it too transactional. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do warm outreach. I personally prefer it a lot, but the reality of warm outreach is also it's only as big as your personal network. So if you don't have a huge network, there's not that much to work with to start off with. And the third one, the one that I preferred, was the idea that you basically create visibility and people come to you. It's called inbound. And what I mentioned earlier, search engine optimization, that's one form of inbound as well. You create content online, Google indexes, people find your website, and then they see that you have some services and you can potentially sell. But another subset of inbound is something called social selling. So it is the idea that you're building demand for your product or service by creating content on social media. Quite simple, right? And it can be different social media. It can be LinkedIn, it can be YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever. But if you're going for the direction that you want big ticket B2B sales, I think that LinkedIn is by far the best platform for that. YouTube is another good alternative, but LinkedIn is where most of the business tends to happen. So I figured I want to go in that direction and start creating content on LinkedIn. And what I didn't know back then, but that I know now, is that the reason that this works is that when most serious companies are buying services or products from other vendors, 86% of the time, when they go into the process of buying, they already have an idea of who the potential products or services that they want to buy from, who they are. And in 90% of those times, it ends up being that from that small short list of vendors, they choose one of those. So the moral of the story here is that if buyers don't know you before they start buying, you usually don't win it. So there's more studies on this showing that in 81% of the cases in the big companies, if most of the stakeholders are aware of you, you will get the deal. Whereas if most of the stakeholders that are the decision makers are not aware of you within an organization, you're down to 4%. So it's almost everything or nothing. So awareness within the organization that's doing the buying is everything. So I didn't know that back then. I had a different logic why I went into all of this. And these are a few of the points that I want to go through with you, why I think that social selling is the superior way to sell. So the first one is that it's an introvert's game, and maybe you don't realize that because you figure people that put themselves out on LinkedIn, they're so all over the place, they're very open. I'm actually not. I'm much more introverted than people think. I think this is pretty uncomfortable, quite honestly, but I have to do it. I'm a CEO. They tell me I have to get up on stage. And but the reality is that you can kind of hide a little bit behind your screen. You have your thoughts, you can put them down on paper, and then you can give them out to the world, and you can engage with the community like that. And I found that was much easier for me to do than to pick up the phone and call 1,000 people. The second thing is it's naturally a process of one-to-many. So if I'm doing classical sales over phone, over email, every relationship is one-to-one. So if I sit down with someone on a coffee, that hour is spent purely with that specific individual. And that is the best way to get depth in relationships, like if you sit down on a coffee face-to-face. But it's also so that it's limiting. You can only do it, again, one person at a time. But if you do posting, for example, and putting out content, you're getting a lot of width and a little bit of depth every single time you post. But if you're present for months and even years on end, all of a sudden that starts accumulating. And then after a few years, all of these DMs that come to me, they start with, "Hey, Senad, I know you, but you don't know me," because I spent all of this time being present in their lives through different social media. It's less redundant than cold outreach. So again, what I mentioned earlier, with creating content, you get to be a little bit creative with it. You kind of have a creative outlet of all your thoughts and all your industry insights. Every post is a little bit different than the one before. Whereas with cold outreach, it's just redundant, right? You pick up the phone and you have the same pitch 1,000 times over. I couldn't do that myself. The next thing is that there is a snowball effect with social selling. So for example, if I'm doing cold outreach and I'm calling people, if I've just started doing that, maybe I can do 30 calls a day. And then if I get really good at it, maybe I can do 60 calls a day within a year. I've doubled the amount, but it's still not exponential, it's linear. There's a limit to how many calls I can do every day. Whereas with social selling, maybe my initial following was, I don't know, 500 people on LinkedIn. Now I have 25,000 people who are following me, and that just keeps accumulating and being bigger and bigger over time. So you have an exponential effect that you can have with social selling, which you can't have in the other variants of selling. The next point is that it actually becomes a moat. So we're all in the same space, right? So we're looking at what's happening with AI right now. It's easier to produce software than ever. There are more products coming out than ever, which inherently means that there's more competition than ever. So everybody is fighting for attention. So if you have something that's already there that puts you in front of people, it makes it much easier to compete. There used to be a time where you can compete in software just by having more code. That's becoming less and less of a competitive advantage nowadays. So a moat is to actually be known within a specific audience and a specific community. And the last one is that the network can move with you. So unlike traditional sales, if you built up a following, people that know who you are, if you want to do the next thing in your life, so maybe I've had an agency these past 10 years, now I want to move into some sort of product, and there's an overlap between that, that audience can potentially come with me if it's close enough to what I was already doing, right? So it's a very convenient way of not starting everything from scratch every single time around. That's why you see a lot of influencers, they can spit out product after product, one after the other, because it's the same audience that they're selling to over and over again. And then the question is, what kind of content to create? And of course, I put down a framework for this, but when I was starting out with this, quite honestly, I was just trying to figure out, like, what do I think that the people that are in my industry would want to hear from me? What are some of the insights that I'm having? What are some of the personal stories that I can share and so on? But if I were to break it down into some sort of framework, it's 3 types of posts that you need to have. So you have something that we call like attention-grabbing posts. These are usually the most broad, and you're trying to get the most reach, the most people to see you with this. And for me, this can be a simple post like, let me tell my story of what it was like to move from Sweden to Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's interesting for a lot of people. It's interesting for a lot of people from the diaspora. And it happens to be so that a lot of our diaspora wants to work with us because they're aware of what we're doing and they think it's a cool story. So that's that kind of post. Then you have the trust posts. They're a bit more narrow. So these are specifically towards your potential clients that you're trying to communicate. And it's the communication is such that you have an insight while you're working, something within your industry, and you basically share it. So the idea is that you're basically helping in public. And because you're helping in public, people feel like they're getting some value, and inherently there's a goodwill being built up. They want to give back to you when the time is right. And the final one is the one that's really focused on getting customers. So posting like case studies of what you've done before, what kind of results you had with other clients and stuff like that. But these types of posts should be very minimal compared to these up here. So this should be maybe 1 in 10 times or maybe even 1 in 20 times that you have a post like this. You should be much more up here, building trust and eventually trying to close down here. Otherwise, this gets very tedious if you post too many of these kinds of posts. And of course, when I saw that we could do this, or I could do this as an individual, at some point I had to think, like, why are we not doing this as a company? If we're able to get this much reach on one person, what if 9 people out of the company are posting? And even our ZenDev profile is very active on this as well. And we started doing this. These are the results for just February month. And what's interesting to see here is, of course, there's a few people here that have been posting for a long time. Like I have almost 25,000 followers, Anna has 20,000, Haris has 9,000, Nikola has almost 5,000. And these are the amounts of impressions that we got during this month from posting. But you also have a few people that just started in the month of February for the first time. So for example, Mia, Mate, Aida, they're all posting with different angles. So Mate is a software developer. He talks about technology. He gives that angle of our company. Haris is in sales. He takes that approach. I have the CEO approach. Aida is in marketing. So we're all presenting ZenDev from our own different angle. And as you can see, LinkedIn has a very, I would say, gracious algorithm. So even though you have a small following, if you have a good post, it's going to share with a much broader audience than the people that are specifically following you. And that's why it's a great place to start. So just within the month of February, this is what it looked like. We had a cumulative number of 611,000 impressions within different people's profiles. 9,000 times people opened our profiles to see who we are, what it is that we do. And we had people who engaged with our content about 11,500 times. So that means that they either liked the content, they commented on the content, or reposted our content. So if we bring this back to that initial slide that we were talking about companies being aware of who we are and what it is that we're doing, just imagine the amount of impact that you can have when 600,000 people can see who you are and what you represent as a company. And we are early on in this trend, but we're not the only ones. There are other companies that are doing this as well. So for example, Hayreach, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're another Balkan company from Macedonia. They grew to 10 million ARR within, I think even MRR, it might be, within 3 years. And this was their primary channel of growth as well, inbound. Cold IQ, another agency that's grown tremendously. Everybody in this company posts. But what's also interesting is that you have enterprise companies that are starting to do this right now. And for the longest time, they were very reluctant for this. And there's a good reason for this, because when you have a brand that you've been building on for maybe a decade or 15, 20 years, sometimes people are worried, what are our employees going to put out there? It might actually be damaging to the brand, right? So you have to be more careful when you build up a really strong brand. But the moral of the story is that HubSpot and ClickUp are doing this anyway, because I think they realized that the upside is so tremendous that it would be a big waste not to take this into consideration. Because if you think about it, we were 9 people in one company profile that were able to do this. HubSpot has thousands of people that are employees. Why are they not using this channel to do new customer acquisition? Now, I've talked about how amazing inbound is for about 15 minutes right now, and now I'm going to tell you some of the drawbacks of inbound. So one of the biggest problems is that you cannot entirely control your pipeline because you're not a part of the conversations that are in these companies, so you don't know what's happening as far as all the different clients that you want to get into their companies, because they'll usually just reach out to you when they have the need, they know they want to buy now, and then you get someone reaching out to you in your DMs. And sometimes you'll have droughts. So sometimes for 2 or 3 months, nobody's popping in your inbox, and maybe you need clients right away, and you need to control that a little bit. And we had this biggest problem, I think, if you're in the tech scene, as most of us are in here. 2020, 2021, amazing economy. Everybody has more work than ever. But then 2023, 2024 hits. Where are all these clients? Right? We're trying to figure that out. And we were trying to then figure out what can we do more than just inbound. And we looked at the alternatives that we have, and we realized that the next best thing that we can do, to be fair, we tried cold outreach. We tried like sending out a bunch of emails, a bunch of DMs with 0 results. The next best thing we could do is to look at all the people who are engaging with our content and not wait for them to reach out to us, but actually us reach out to them. So, hey, I see you've been engaging with our content for a long time. Maybe we can jump on a call and discuss, you frame it in a way that's better than what I just said right now. And it turns out that when we did that, like 100% of the times, they were willing to jump on a call with us, because over these years, all of this content made us a familiar face with them. What we talked about earlier, that trust being built, it's already there. So it's very easy to jump into that phone call. And what's also good is that the more we post it, the broader that audience of warm people is. It's what I talked about in that early slide about warm. It's only the people that you know. Well, if you've done this for years, now there's maybe 10,000 people that know who you are. You just need to be aware of who they are. And this is where the problems started popping up for us in our company. So if we look at this slide, so in February month, we had 11,500 people engaging with our content. Like, there's so much research to be done here. Who are you? What company do you work in? Is there any angle that we can approach you? So here we actually built our own tool, Linkbound, that does all of that in the background. It just analyzes who are these people, what companies do they work in, is it our ICP? And then the system tells us, okay, this is a relevant person to reach out to. 7 important things to know, and this is more or less the final slide. If you want to get into this, just some things that I learned along the way that if you want to get into this, to not have to kind of like reinvent the wheel. The first one is that if you don't want to do this, I think it's lucrative, the idea that I'm not going to post, it's going to be the company profile that posts, but company profiles never get the same amount of traction as individuals. People want to follow people. So there's a reason why Elon Musk has way more following than Tesla, why Bill Gates has more following than Microsoft, and so on. The second one is that if you're going to do this, the first thing you need to do is to optimize your personal profile. So if people are already looking at your content, and if they're interested at all, they're going to click on your profile to see what it is that you do. And within 5 seconds, they need to understand, okay, these are the types of services or products that this person offers. So you first need to optimize your LinkedIn profile, and there's a ton of videos online for how you can do that. if you want to have a chance at this game, my personal opinion is that you have to post at least twice a week on LinkedIn and over a long period of time. In the same way that you cannot bring in a salesperson into your company and see how they do over 3 weeks, this is the same element. You probably have to give it 6 to 12 months to start seeing those first results. And as time goes on, it's only going to be better and better. So it's a game of longevity and consistency. Number 4, don't be afraid to have fun. So especially early on, we talked about it, that you have these big corporations that are these behemoths. They're very wary of how their brand is going to be perceived. So they do very safe things, which are not so interesting. You can be very playful on LinkedIn, and there's going to be the people that complain, oh, this is not Instagram, this is not Facebook. It can be anything you want it to be. There's nobody that makes the rules. So you have to grab attention in any way that you can. And the good news is that you don't have anything to lose early on. Another one is that, of course, most people who engage with your content are, especially initially, going to be your friends, people that are working with you, personal connections and stuff like that. But you have to be aware that 3 to maybe 5% of the people eventually that are engaged are your perfect ICP that are not that, and that's why you're posting for those people. Number 6, a lot of people will try to sell to you. So my inbox is a mess. Like I get way more people trying to sell to me than to buy from me. It's probably a 10 to 1 or like 1 to 10 ratio, if you will. And that's okay, I understand, and a lot of people, looking for recruitment opportunities and stuff like that. But 1 time out of 10, you will have an opportunity to sell as well. And it does take a lot of time to handle an inbox once you grow a big following, but you can get support from other people in your company to do that as well. That's how we do it internally. And the last one, of course, you have to be aware that the more you post, the bigger your profile comes. You're going to get a lot of love, but you're also going to get more hate. And I think I say that just so you're aware. It's not a big deal. That's the whole thing. Like, these comments cannot hurt you. If anything, they'll make you a little bit tougher. And I've been very wary of it. And it's almost like what I've seen, and I'm not talking about myself right now, I'm talking about other people, but like there's a direct proportion between the amount of success I see people have and the amount of hate I see people have. So it's actually a good sign once you actually start having these negative comments in your posts, right? So that's my final slide. I would encourage you to try this, at least talk about it within your organization. I do have one bonus slide after this, which is on the topic of what AI is doing within our industry, what it implies for agencies and the whole development world. But before we get into that final slide, I would just like to see if there are any questions on this specific topic. All right, thank you guys. Tony at the back.
So you have like 100 plus people in your company, and like 10% of you are active on LinkedIn. Like, what's the difference in mindset between people, who join the train and decide to post? You obviously have people that are not willing to play the game. So
Yes.
how do you motivate them?
Yeah. So there's the question that Tony had was, we have 100 people in our company, but still it's only 10 people that are posting, and that's a great point. What you have to understand about LinkedIn profiles, to some extent, it's a personal thing as well. It's not the ownership of the company, so you can't force people to post if they don't want to post, and maybe it's not a focus of theirs to start off with. So for this initial round, the way that we said it was just like, let's have all the people that want to do it, and then we created an internal competition. So if we hit 4 million impressions within the first 4 months, we're all going to go to Barcelona. And we're on a good way to get there. So we'll see what we do for the second round. I think the first round, the rest of the people in the company need to see that we go to Barcelona. And then that's going to have a spillover effect on them. But yeah, there are different kinds of incentives that you can have. I'm also quite honestly thinking about a compensation, like in money. If you want to post 8 times a month, whatever the minimum is, you're going to have this bonus on your salary. Nothing wrong with that, because quite honestly, I think it's very cheap for what you get back. Yeah. So the question was, what kind of content have I seen produces the best outcomes? And ironically, the content that gets the least engagement, that gets the least reach, is the one that tends to convert the best in sales. Why? Because I'll have a post on what I talked about earlier, what it's like living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I have a big following of people from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then there's a nostalgic thing that pops up in people, oh man, this is amazing, I'm gonna like this, his life in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But those are not necessarily the people that are buying from me, right? It's good for reach so that people are aware of what you do. And then as you narrow it down, the more technical I get, the more specific I get, the more I talk about the case studies that we're doing, the less people care about it, but I get to the actual people that are relevant to the ones that I potentially can sell to. And I see that like very clearly. When it's that type of a post, I get, 30, 40 people engaging. If I'm talking about Bosnia, it's 500 people engaging. But out of these 30 or 40, all of a sudden somebody pops up in the DMs and says, hey, I've been following you for a long time. Can we jump on a call? Yeah, go ahead first. I'm sorry. There was a gentleman before that. I saw him earlier. I'm sorry.
Let's say that you're now a brand new company, you're making it, and let's say that it's bought, let's say that it's Uber, and you are interested in making peer-to-peer. There's a restaurant and there's a buyer from this restaurant. Will you use the same technique using LinkedIn or other platforms? Do you want the same, just a platform?
Yeah, I mean, if anything B2B related, I would be on LinkedIn. If it's more consumer related, maybe Instagram and platforms like that make more sense. But more or less anything B2B, my focus would be LinkedIn. And if you're comfortable on camera, YouTube. I would say that as well. I think that gives a lot of results. My experience, I did YouTube for a while. It takes much more time. So like to do a proper video and the editing, it's like a full day of work. Whereas a LinkedIn post, I'll spit one out in 15 minutes and thousands of people get to see it. So like everybody, I'm thinking about what's my best return on investment. The people that are doing this the best, the Alex Hormozis in the world, the Gary Vaynerchuk and all of them, they're probably putting out 50 content pieces a day across all these different platforms. More power to them, but I don't have that kind of a capacity to do that, nor maybe even will to do that. But my general is probably 3 to 5 times per week during the weekdays that I post, and that tends to be good enough, I guess. Yeah.
It's more like, let's say that you have multiple layers. Here you're having like, let's say one product, you get a reach out and you sell your product to this one customer.
Sure.
But it's more like, let's say that you have the restaurant and you have the guy who needs to buy from the restaurant. How do you get both guys on the platform?
Yeah, that's a networks problem. I mean, I think those companies are horrible to start off with because they're so tough because you have to manage both sides, and there's a what they call a tough side. Always something is tougher to get either one side or the other, and I think you can angle the content so it hits both of them. So you have one post where it's focusing on the one side of it, and you have a second post that's focusing on the other one, and constantly playing that balance. You're trying to attract them and also gain awareness about your product in general. So I don't know specifically about the company that you're talking about, but I know that LinkedIn is kind of like sushi bits, right? It's not a full meal. So like every post is just a little bit of information that can be valuable. If you write too long of a post, nobody's going to read it. So that's the thing here. You decide, okay, I'm going to write this one piece of information that I want to get to this specific audience, and the next time I'll have a different one for a different part of the audience. Yeah, you got it. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the lady over there. Yeah. So the question was basically, have we done any planning, or are we just letting this happen organically and see where the chips may land, right? And I think initially when I started it, and that's what I talked about earlier as well, whenever somebody's starting early on, I think they need to find their voice on LinkedIn. So maybe just post whatever you think feels right the first 3 or 6 months, and eventually you're going to find a few pillars of content that you can come back to, because that's the reality of it as well. It's not an infinite amount of things that you're talking about. So it's more about repetition than actually educating, and you need to find a different angle on the same type of information over and over. So initially it was just like that. This month of February was the first month that we actually all sat down, not to tell each other what to do, but just to be aware, okay, you're going to take this angle, you want to talk about technology and this, I want to talk about entrepreneurship and this, just to be aware of what everybody's bringing to the table, and then we started posting. As far as time, we didn't talk about it, quite honestly. I just hoped that somebody there would be able to squeeze it in their schedule. What I've seen is that for me, for example, I talked about it, it's maybe 15, 20 minutes to spit out a post. My co-founder, he never liked writing. When he started this, he said, it took me 2 hours to write a post. I was like, man, maybe it's not worth it then. But eventually, as he kept doing it, it became easier and easier, because just as with everything, you get better with time, so you need to invest into it. I think this. I'm sorry, I can't keep track. But we're going to get around. I promise. I apologize. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Danish, part speaks Croatian. Of course, I'm Croatian. I speak
Yeah.
native Croatian speaker, speak Danish,
Yeah.
speak English. How to, what language should I post?
Yeah, I think you almost kind of like asked the question and answered it, because it is different audiences and you want to make sure to hit both of them with the same post. English is the most natural thing, but you at the same time you want them to feel a little bit close to them, so every now and then you squeeze in a Danish post, or every now and then you squeeze in a Croatian post. Every now and then you mention Denmark as a country as well, to build a closer tie with them in that way. But yeah, English seems to be the way to go for that. I'm going to come back to you now. Yeah, it's you. Sorry.
Okay, two questions. One is connected with yours. Are you writing in real time, let's say? You write the post today, or you have like a schedule?
A schedule for it, yeah. The
second
yeah.
question is, how active are you, not only in terms of I'm posting, but also being social, commenting, connecting with other people?
Right. So the question was, do I have a way that I work in a schedule, prepare all my content, and then post it at a specific time? We have people in our company that do that. In our company does that. She prepares it on a Sunday. She has 5 posts that are going to go out throughout the week, and that's her approach. For me, it's always been as I go. I think I'm a little bit more of a person that I need inspiration for it to happen, and whenever I have it, I was like, okay, now it happens, and I put it out there, and that's what works best for me personally. Then of course, the primary thing to be aware of, once you put out a post, that first hour is crucial. So if people engage with your content there, you're getting more reach on your post. And if you don't comment back to those people, your reach is going to get boggled down. So you need to be there the first hour after the post, checking, has anybody commented, engaging with me, and then make sure to post with them, because that's going to exponentially grow the reach of that specific post. And I think that's okay, that initial hour. What I tend to find that takes the most amount of time is that DM that happens after that. So every time I post, something is going to start happening in my DMs, a lot of people coming in, and all of that, initially I could handle it, now I can't, so now I get support for that as well from people in my company, answering all the people that are coming in. With other people, yeah, but just organically. I know there are people that do this very strategically. They follow specific people. They turn on this notification bell. Whenever this person posts, I need to be there and commenting fast. I've never done that. Again, just organically. If I think this is something that's interesting for me, I just comment or I like on it, basically. So yeah, my approach. I'm not saying it's right. I know there are many schools of thought that don't agree with me, but that's how I do it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
No, I just want to know, did you consider, or was that to having a person who will create the content, if you wanted to get as many employees on the board, and somebody would say, I don't have time to do that, would you consider, having one person who would help them, to get the profile going?
Yeah, I have thought about it. I just happen to think, having done this for sometimes, there's almost like there's a print on everybody that you can see it in the type of content that they do. And I worry that if you have the same ghostwriter doing it for 10 people in the organization, that you're not going to get that. If they want to do that, the way that I would recommend it is that let them first individually start posting for maybe 3 to 6 months, so that the person that takes over understands what kind of an angle are they. It has to remain in the style that that person would have. That's what I would actually recommend. I know that not every executive has the time to do that, so there are definitely executives that have ghostwriters, but I feel that from the individual itself is always the best, because I would be disappointed if I knew that this executive, even on the highest levels, if Elon Musk's Twitter is actually not Elon Musk, oh no, I don't want to listen to your ghostwriter, yeah. So, go ahead.
Hi, so I think I have a question. One thing that I'm struggling with, I recently started posting on LinkedIn, and I've been posting on Instagram for a while, and I don't know how to move from building trust to actually selling.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any advice, or how did you do it? Like, what did you do after building the community? How do you actually sell?
The question was how to move from just building the community into actually converting into something. And what is it that you're selling, if I can just ask?
I'm a UX/UI designer.
UX/UI designer, so your own services that you're trying to provide. So the way that I would do it, so we talked about warm outreach and inbound. So if nothing is happening yet on the inbound, you can force it a little bit with the warm outreach. So if you start analyzing the people who are engaging with your content, and specifically if it's not the broad type of content, if it's the content that's like very specific, your case studies, your designs that you've done before, then you can actually reach out to those people and those companies. And what's going to happen a lot of times is that you're going to look who's engaging with my content on the other side, and you're going to maybe realize they're not a decision maker within that organization, but they're the gateway to the decision maker in that organization. That's how we use it as well. There are not many CEOs who are engaging massively with content, right? But you need to have a pathway in there. So to some of these people, you want to open up with conversations. Not be too aggressive, I would say, because again, you've maybe had months and years to build up a relationship. If the first thing you do is try to sell to them in a DM, it becomes transactional and you lose a lot of that leverage that you built up. So start easy and say, hey, I've been noticing that you're engaging with my content. What's up? Do you do something similar? Start a conversation and then see if it can lead to something. Yeah, we got it.
I assume that you build clusters with your customers, and did you ever consider to post cluster-specific content instead of this broad approach?
Yeah, so for example, we do a lot of e-commerce in the B2B space, so that could be seen as one cluster. But we haven't done anything more specific than the fact that we're aware that we've done that within our own portfolio, what we have. And then we basically just put that out there, and then we see who's engaging with that specific content. And then this tool, LinkedIn, that we created for ourselves in the background, it analyzes within specific topics who has engaged with what. And then we know, okay, they're interested in specifically this kind of content for us because they've engaged with all our posts that have the word e-commerce in it, for example.
So your highest level will be e-commerce and not a specific industry or brand?
It could be. So you could, we've done a lot of prop tech, so we write about prop tech in general as well. That's one way to do it as well. And then based off of that, we go in a direction as well. But being that we're pretty generic as a company, we're not that focused ourselves. We've never naturally created that kind of content that is extremely focused, but you definitely can do that. I mean, I see a ton of people that are only focusing on one single thing, very high value customers, not a huge follower base, but converting tremendously on that small audience. Yes, exactly.
Because that relates to her question. If you're just too small and you are not building a trustful community, you just take ownership of the brand of your customer, and then suddenly their trust becomes your trust.
It's a great point. And for example, Maya Voje, who I follow on LinkedIn, and she's a friend of mine as well from Slovenia, she only posts about go-to-marketing strategies. That's all it is, right? And she kills it in that space, and people know she's you won't have any like personal stories on her profile like you'll see on mine or some other people. Only this, but she kills it within that space. Yeah. I him and that.
Do you use AI tools for content inspiration and scaling? And if you do, explain how you
Yeah. So the question was if we use AI for content creation and inspiration or writing or anything of that nature. And initially, when AI came around and the LLMs that we see today in 2023, I was a bit pissed. I was like, I've developed all this time, writing skills and stuff like that, and this AI is better than me. But then eventually, I ended up using it like everybody else. I write down my initial idea. I don't focus too much on the details. I use help of these LLMs. But we have people in our organization that use it much more systematically. So they're playing with this Claude code. I don't know how much you guys are following the latest, what's happening in AI. So they write down all the things that are personal about themselves in their lives and all the things that they've done professionally. And they have this algorithm that kind of makes connections between these 2 points, because when you're writing this content, you want them to be aware of you as the individual, because that's who they're actually creating a connection with, but also the professional side of you, what can you do and what can you contribute with. So they're using it in an algorithm that actually does help them produce content, and they tell me that it works remarkably well. I haven't tried it yet myself. I probably will just to see what it works like. But yeah, people are playing with it in different scales. So I think it's a matter of percentages, like how much is AI helping you? Is it 10% of the job or is it 50% of the job? And everybody's at a different scale there. Yeah. Go ahead.
I started posting a few years ago, and I was really enjoying it, and I saw big improvement, and it helped me a lot. However, I wanted to ask, did you ever feel crisis? Like, you don't feel like going to that social media ever again?
Yeah.
Whenever you open it, it's like, oh, everybody's super smart, everybody's so pretentious somehow.
Yes.
And then you go to Reddit.
Oh yeah, and people are hating. I understand.
You feel sometimes like that. I know in the last few months I feel this crisis, and I know it's bad because I still don't feel like I have enough job, but still I know I need to come back.
Yeah.
And you felt it, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, the question was, have I had a crisis personally seeing myself being this LinkedIn person, but also all the content that you have to consume because you're natural on the platform reading everybody else. And definitely there's something real to be said about like LinkedIn fatigue or social media fatigue. You get disgusted with it. You get a little bit disgusted with yourself as well. Here I am again posting about myself. But I always come back to like you like everything in life. I don't always like brushing my teeth either, but I have to do it. So like I try to check my just like, Senad, stop being a bitch. You have to go back. You have to continue posting, keep doing the work. But yeah, I definitely have fall offs, and then I have hypes again. And I try not to die out entirely, right? And it is tough because when I'm the best post that I usually have, I feel it in my gut. Oh, I really enjoyed this myself, and I know that the audience is going to enjoy this. Sometimes I just don't have that, and I feel like whatever I'm putting out is almost like fake, even to myself. But still, it's the best that I can do in that moment. I can't always have that full-on inspiration, and yeah, I just keep coming back to it. I think that's the key. Even if you drop off for a couple of weeks, a month, come back to it. And I have had drop-offs of maybe not being present in a month or something like that. So yeah, you got it. Oh, that's obnoxious. The question over there, yeah.
You were mentioning a lot of inbound leads from LinkedIn, Google, and stuff like that. So basically, in one moment or another, it all funnels down to some kind of CRM.
Mm-hmm.
How do you cope with all the people? How do you measure who's been outreach to, who did you talk to,
Right.
who's important, who's not?
Yeah.
Do you have any CRM that you use or?
Yeah, so now it's the CRM that we built ourselves, Linkbound. We use it for that. Before that, it would be someone pops in my DM and says, like, I work for this corporation in Sweden. I've been looking at what you're doing. We're looking for a development partner. I would take that message, go to Slack, send it to our sales team. They put it in the CRM. We're actually using a creation product, Productive. I don't know if you're aware of them. So we use Productive as well, built out of Zagreb. And yeah, that was basically the process that we had. And then we had to figure out a way like who's going to take care of that conversation further on. So the system that we built, because so many people were reaching out to me, was they're expecting me in that initial call because it was me they built a relationship with. So I show up in that first call and we actually have an hour together, but one of my sales representatives is there as well, and they take it further for those next steps as well. But I make sure to actually show up there because I think they're expecting that of me.
Are you doing it manually or it's automated?
Which part? So it's not a tremendous amount of people that reach out to you like inbound. So it's a thing where you can post maybe an entire month, and during this month, maybe 3 to 5 people will come into your DMs and say, "Hey, let's talk." Right? So it's not overwhelming, but the positive things when you compare it to other types of leads is these are leads at the very moment when they're ready to buy. That's when they reach out to you. So they're very high value leads, but not that many of them. So CRMs, it's never been like overwhelming for us, the amount of DMs that we get that are in that way.
Not even from SEO, Google inbound.
Yeah, from SEO for our agency specifically, we've been getting a little bit of business there. People come to our website and go through our forms and enter things there, but nothing too much there either. And usually the biggest jobs don't come through a form. Usually it's more an individual actually wanting to talk to me. So it's usually smaller projects that are like maybe up to $20,000 in scope for that type of work.
Do you notice a difference in the amount of people reaching out to you with this whole AI situation that we have right now?
Yeah, I mean, the question was, do I see more people reaching out to me with AI? Yes, because my official title on LinkedIn is the CEO in Sweden as well. So there's a ton of companies offering the exact same services that ZenDev is offering, trying to sell to me because they're not aware that that's actually what ZenDev does. And that's, again, even more reason to go to social selling, because I think right now with AI, everybody's trying to be smart with it. They're like, I'm going to do mass outreach, but I'm going to make it not feel like mass outreach because AI is going to take a look at your LinkedIn profile and customize the message a little bit so that it looks like it's personal. But people get it. It's still not personal. I get it when I see it and stuff like that. So I get a ton of those messages. I also get every now and then people in the comments who were not there before, where I can see right away this is not a person who's posting on here. They're trying to build up their profile by being present on my LinkedIn profile and commenting. And oftentimes I will have fun with it as well. Like I'll make fun of that comment.
Like, is the demand for your services going down if you're okay talking?
Oh yeah. that's actually the last slide here. So this is what Tony asked me to talk a little bit about here as well. So with everything happening in AI and development and things like that, what are we seeing? I think demand has gone down in general from 2023 because we were living in a bubble before that. There was a ton of venture capital up until 2022. And I think we worked a ton with a lot of startups that were venture capital funded, and then they would do the development with us. That has dried out independent of AI or not. So 2023, we came into this not because AI took our work, just there was not enough money going around. So we actually, as a company, pivoted from working with startups to working with enterprises. And we were lucky enough just to be in that size that enterprises would take us seriously. Because working with startups, and we've been doing it as a service provider, is actually, I realized over the years, a hell. Because a startup has a finite amount of money that they need to spend within a specific amount of time. And you kind of have to run a race with that startup that is brutal. And it's usually not a lot of money, so you don't get paid really well. You're running with them so that they're able to raise their next round of capital. And oftentimes, if they are able to raise that next round of capital, they'll tell you, okay, now we're going to find in-house developers and we don't need to work together, right? So those have been the pivots that have worked for us. And when we're working with these corporations, quite honestly, like, it hasn't happened too much in there. I don't know if they're slow to it, but of course, everybody's using AI within our organization with Cursor to write code faster and stuff like that. What I have seen is MVPs are a problem nowadays. So everybody's expecting to get an MVP built extremely, extremely fast, extremely for very little money, if you will. And that's logical because you have vibe coding right now, so you can put out something really fast. But the problem here is that it works to a certain level of project size. And that's what we're actively experimenting with right now in ZenDev. We've seen that if it's not too high of a complexity, if it's a project up to $30,000 perhaps, then it can work. For the biggest project, for the biggest complexity, it breaks down, and then there's more hassle to fix it still than to actually write it from scratch. So I went in a lot of different directions with this answer, but I just want to give you an idea of what we're seeing, and I haven't seen that it's an issue. And even with the vibe coding, the people that are doing vibe coding within our organization, they're very senior, and they actually don't want to put in juniors to work with this vibe coding, because that's where these things go to hell, kind of like, because if they don't know what's actually being written, if it's good or not, things tend to fall apart. So even the senior people, they do use AI and vibe coding, but they want to get support from other senior people in that as well. Which brings me to my last point, is what we are seeing in the industry is that there's a very tough time for entry-level developers to come into the industry, because a lot of the work that they used to do on an entry level is the kind of work that AI can do. And I don't know what the solution is going to be. Maybe the market is just going to pick up and there's going to be a need for developers, so they naturally have to come in. But right now, even ourselves, we haven't hired anybody from a faculty probably in over 2 years. And it's not that we don't want to. We have clients from Sweden that are telling us, I want somebody 5 years plus. And it's that kind of a market where they can make those kinds of demands on us. So I really feel with these college students, because 5 years ago, all of us were telling them, get into IT, there's so many opportunities. And now they're all coming out of college with no opportunities, unfortunately. That was a downer, but yeah. Any more questions? Tony?
By growing up in Sweden, basically, what is your experience? What's the main difference in mindset between people from Nordics and us here, and what can we learn?
Yeah. So the question was, having grown up in Sweden and the Nordics, and what have I seen as the primary difference between what I've seen in the Balkan region and what I've seen up there? And what I would say is just an inherent amount of trust. So people in Sweden by default are very trustworthy. Most people in Sweden trust each other by default. And what that naturally leads to is that collaborations become natural. So people work with each other, they're willing to go into collaborations with other people. Here in the Balkans, it's been very opposite. I feel like, especially for me coming to Bosnia, and I didn't realize it early on, like gaining trust with people is something that takes a long time. I've seen it with my employees. Like it probably took me 5 years of telling them, like, if I have a shitty idea, you need to tell it to me, like, until they were actually comfortable with giving me that kind of a feedback. So you really have to work on that. Whereas Sweden is a very flat hierarchy. I mean, I had an example earlier. My professor from my college, very experienced entrepreneur, is picking me as a student to be a co-founder of a company with him. And to me, that wasn't that big of a deal. But when I came here and I started talking about this, they're like, what do you mean your professor just came up to you and like, how did that work? And that's what I realized, that you can't change that overnight, right? So you can't tell people here, just be more trusting. There's a reason why we've ended up where we've ended up, but you have to be aware of it. And then when you are aware of it, we try to educate our people, okay, this is what you can expect from Swedish culture and where we need to be. And also that, I would say, natural initiative. So unlike maybe Germany, where you still have like very strong hierarchies, Swedish culture, no hierarchies, and they expect you to, you know, make room for yourself, even though you are maybe an entry-level junior and or whatever, right? Any more? Let's get drunk. Thank you guys so much.